Shabbat Shalom from Under the Dome. My name is Noel Joshua Hadley, and tonight I'm, as you can see, joined by Pamela Glasgow. Now, before I really bring her on, I just want to say I'm coming to you tonight from the Outer Banks. That is not a real fish behind me over there. That's like a decoration of a pretend fish. But I'm actually on a brocation this week, and I'm going to ask him to come over here. He's over here on the side, and I'm here with my Hebrew, Dave. We're here to spend the week together, and we're all settling in today. Anyways, good times. And he was over here laughing at me because I'm drinking my coffee and just to function. And he was telling me that if he were to drink coffee, he'd be up till 4 a.m, which wouldn't be a bad thing because then we could stay up talking. Now, tonight we're going to be going over the Paleo-Hebrew Psalms. And again, before I bring her on, she's right over here on my stage left, patiently waiting. I wanted to show some of the books that have been released over the last few months with the TUC book club, one of which is Pamela's. Yes, I actually I bring my library with me on vacation. So this right here we released a few months ago. This is the Book of the Nazarene, and the Book of the Nazarene and the Enlightened One, excellent read. This one right here just came out. I just got this like a few days ago. Nice controversial read right there. Mary Magdalene, wife of Messiah. Already I'm getting some hate mail just for holding this up. And this is some of my favorite research I've ever put on my entire life. Last month's selection was The Hidden Wilderness, which, again, this is some of my favorite research I've ever put out. Both of these books are by me, yours truly, Noel Joshua Hadley, The Hidden Wilderness, and Mary Magdalene. And then we're getting ready next month to release The Earth Not a Globe Review Volume 2. Well, here is Earth Not a Globe Volume 1. Well, yes, I brought all these books from home. I carry my bookshelf with me. And so this week we will be going over Pamela's, this was Pamela 2 or 3 months ago we released this one, Psalms from the Paleo-Hebrew Volume 1, and she is actively working on Volume 2 right now. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Pamela, and if you don't mind, Pamela, maybe you could just open us with prayer. I know I'm just putting you on the spot there, but that would be awesome if you did, and then I'll just hand it over to you.
Allah Hayam, ever living. Thank you for this time that we are together. Thank you that we are gathered in one purpose, to find out what you have hidden in your word. And we ask that you would grant to us wisdom and understanding, so that our minds, our hearts, our nefesh should be enlightened and revived and renewed with your Ruach. And we ask these things in the name of our Savior, Yeshua HaMashiach.
Thank you, Pamela. So take us away.
All right. If you're looking along with the PDF, the file, you'll see, how did I get here from there? And you'll notice there's a family picture. We were on a trip to the Great Smoky Mountains, and if you can see by the clothing, this was during the 70s. You see my stylish coat, clothing, a little bit of high waters there. This is my brother Alan, my sister Kathy, she's in the pink, and then myself by the family station wagon. And the reason why I showed this picture was it sort of represents a journey, the journey that I've been on. I would not have imagined myself on that day that I would ever have done anything like this. I grew up in the Protestant church, of course, and I knew a few things about the Hebrew culture. Of course, we studied the Old and the New Testaments, and I had my favorite stories. There was David and Goliath, Noah and his ark, Daniel in his lion's den. And I used, we had a few words, not many, because, this is Alabama, South Bible Belt. And shalom and amen, that were as close to Hebrew as I got. I had my favorite characters. in the Old Testament. One of them, of course, was David. And I really, at this time in my life, at this picture, I wanted to be Enoch. I can't really tell you why. You're probably just saying Enoch, because at that time, you just have just that little bit of a blurb in the Old Testament, and at that time, I didn't know that there had been a book attributed to him. Just these few short verses in Genesis 5:21-24. Enoch lived 65 years and became the father of Methuselah. Then Enoch walked with Al-Hayam 300 years after he became the father of Methuselah, and he had other sons and daughters. So all the days of Enoch were 365 days, a significant number. Enoch walked with Al-Hayam, and he was not, for Al-Hayam took him. Now, maybe it was the part where, Enoch was translated, he didn't see death, or perhaps it was the idea that Enoch found again what we lost, what humanity lost in the garden, that is walking with Al-Hayam. So whatever was the allure, I wanted it. And I say these things to help you understand some of the journey that I've been with, because I had a deep, I was raised with a deep reverence for the word of the Most High, and these influences. My father in particular really loved the scriptures. So all these influences influenced my life, influenced the path that I took, Hadaref, that Yahweh brought me on. And even being a church musician, it has led me to this moment. Because as I said, I felt an affinity for David. He was a musician. He wanted to walk with Yah. And so any mistakes that we're encountering, they're mine. They're mine. I'm human, and there is no translation that is perfect. There's no translation that's perfect, not even mine. And so any knowledge that I have, any wisdom, any understanding, Yah gave it. He planted the seeds in my whole life. And the desire in my life, he cultivated it, tended it, pruned it. And he alone gives Hachamaha and Bayanaha, which is wisdom and understanding. That being said, let's get started. Noel, that is for you.
Well, I'm going to throw a curveball into this, and I'm going to ask Dave here with me to read Psalm 6. So, Dave, you want to step over here? He's got the book in front of him.
Do I have to be on camera?
He does. No, you do not have to be on camera.
Well,
but you can visualize him right here next to me.
I got the book and everything. All right. Psalm 6, to the preeminent musician, to the superintendent of temple services, singer.
Can you guys all hear that? Pamela, good? Nice and loud? All right.
All right. A mocking or taunt song to be performed upon shemanit, an 8-stringed lyre. A mizmor of Dawid. Yahweh, self-existent one, do not rebuke me. When your face burns with anger, or when your nostrils flare, and you breathe heavily in your wrath, discipline me not with the venomous poison of rage poured out. Be gracious and show mercy. Pity me, for I am weak and feeble. Rapha, heal me. O Yahuwah, make me whole, for disturbed within me are my limbs, my bones, they tremble. My nerves are shot. My nefesh, the living vital essence of self, the center of my person, the seat of my emotions, that which breathes, is dismayed. Make vast the space, broaden my horizons, free me from narrowness and vexation. On account of your grace and favor, your zeal and ardor, turn back. Restore that which was taken, O Yahuwah. Draw me with cords of love, deliver my nefesh, the living vital essence of self, the center of my person, the seat of my emotions, that which breathes on account of your zeal, your ardor, your grace and favor, your mercy. For there is no remembrance of you in the realm of death, in Sheol, the hollow subterranean place, who will cast forth your praise. I labor and toil. Fatigue grips me. Le'alaha, the night terror. During that time period of darkness and obscurity, my bed swims with tears. My couch flows from my weeping. My eyes are moth-eaten because of vexation and grief. My eyes are stricken with age on account of my rival who oppresses me, my adversary who brings me to distress. Turn away from me. Depart, all you fabricators of emptiness and vanity, for Yahuwah has heard and answered the voice of my weeping. Yahuwah heard and answered my supplication. Yahuwah took for himself, yes, he received my hymn of supplication. Let the hope and expectation of my adversaries fail, and let my haters be exceedingly vexed. Let their mind be troubled and confused. Let them tremble in trepidation. Turn them back and put them to silence in a wink.
That will be Dave's this is the last time I ever have a Sabbath with Noel because I threw him on the spot there. Thank you, Dave. That was amazing. Good job. So back to you, Pamela.
All right. Now, if you will, look to where it says notes. Now, this particular psalm, I really did. I translated it 3 times, 4 if you count when I was preparing for tonight. I kept losing my notes. To understand, sort of the scope of this misfortune, I need to answer a question that's often put to me. How do you translate the Paleo-Hebrew? Now, first, I write the Paleo scripture by hand. Now, why? Well, I feel like it's a commandment for us. The people of Yasharal were often referred to as a nation of kings and priests. That word for king is malach. It means one who walks for another. Those last 2 letters, reading from right to left, the lamed and the kuf, kaf, that means foot, one who walks from the foot. So malach is often translated, as I said, king or messenger. From its meaning, you can see that messenger is probably the better choice. There were rules under which a malach or king were to operate. And we read about it in Deuteronomy 17:20. Now, it should come about when he, malach, sits on the throne of his kingdom, he shall write for himself a copy of the law, HaTorah, on a scroll in the presence of the Levitical priests. It shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, that he may learn to reverently fear Yahweh, Yahweh, by carefully observing all the words of the Torah and the statutes, that his heart may not be lifted up above his countrymen, and that he may not turn aside to the right or the left, so that he and his sons may continue in his kingdom in the midst of Yasharal. So a malach is expected to write a copy, with the implication, of course, that he would become a student of the Torah. As a side note, if you're not writing scriptures by hand, I encourage you to do so. Not necessarily in the Paleo. I think everyone should be writing it. After writing these words, I search the meaning of the individual letters. I try to discover the 2-letter parent root. Most Hebrew words have a 2-letter parent root. Often, especially in longer words, you have more than one. And these are like layered on one another. And I then seek the 3-letter child root. And prefixes and suffixes are taken into account. My go-to lexicon or dictionary is Gesenius. And I have a hard copy. And the reason I have a hard copy is they change it. They change these things. So this is 1979 that I have. I do this for every word. Translating the Paleo, at least my standard operating procedures, it's a lengthy process. And sometimes it gets very frustrating. I often pray for wisdom, hakamaha, and understanding, bianha. And now let's look at these Debarayam of Psalm 6. So first of all, we have the Paleo-Hebrew letters themselves. Now, some people have said that Hebrew does not have vowels. Yes, it does. There are 5 vowels: the aleph, the alf, the ha, the uah, the ya, and the ayan. And Paleo-Hebrew is unique in that it has these stealth vowels attached to every syllable, every symbol. So as you can see, it's usually the first 2 letters. Say, for instance, alf, the sound is ah. The bat, it's ba. And the gam or gamal is ga. So you can see each one of these letters has its own vowel attached. So there's no need for nikud. And in fact, the nikud are interpolation, and they're a way of hiding meaning. Now, I didn't drop into the chat, but I do have right here, I've inserted a few, this one note into the PDF. We have the chart of the letters. And now this is the first word in Psalm 6. And I kind of did these little color brackets to show you that there are actually, in this one word, what's called one word, there are actually 4 words. And we have lama nutzak, and it shows all these multiple meanings. We have the lam and the mam. The lam is that first on the right, and it's the picture of a shepherd's staff. And that letter, the actions related to being a shepherd are attached to that letter. So leading, guiding, controlling, pulling toward, pushing away, all those things are attached to that letter. That meaning is attached. The next letter is the mam, which is a picture of water, such as the water of chaos or the water of life. In this case, I would say water of life. So this person, Nutzak, is one who has authority, who is leading toward the water of life. The next 3 words, letters, form the child root Nutzak. And again, reading from the right to left, we have Nun, which looks like a lightning bolt, like the Harry Potter lightning bolt. And it shows the picture, we have the Zod, which is it's showing like one trail, and then you have this other trail leading off from it. And lastly, we have the Hot, which is the image of a tent wall. The letters Nun's meaning is fish, to sprout, to spread, offspring, action, life, heir to the throne. That's interesting. glitter. The first and last meanings of this letter are tied together. The fish and the glitter, when you see a fish in the water, sometimes the scales will glint in the light. The letter Zod carries the meaning of a trail, path, fish hook to pull, desire, and righteous. Zedekiah is the word for righteous. So that it actually means, Zedekiah righteousness means to follow the correct path. And finally, the hot shows us a tent wall or fence. It can mean inner room or to separate, to obstruct, a wall of obstruction or a wall of protection. And Jusinius, he tells us the definition of TUC is to shine, to be bright, to be over something, to superintend, to lead in music. This person is one who shines, who is bright, who oversees, or who is the superintendent of something, who leads in music, is both a wall of protection and a wall of obstruction. A person who leads us in the right path or toward the water of life. Now, I didn't put this in the PDF, but historically, Aaron and his sons, the high priest, and then you have the Levitical priest. These are layers of protection. These people are layers of protection to keep, he said, so that I don't break out among the people. Noel said something during Passover that I found very profound. He talked about that there's a certain wildness about the Most High. You can't contain him. You can't contain him. So the Levitical priests, the high priests, they're a layer of protection for people to keep them from, inadvertently incurring wrath, I suppose you could say. Now, the amazing thing to me is that all of this meaning, all of this information is contained within one word. To the bright, shining, all that. And at this point in the Psalms, I was being very conservative. I was still very much, feeling my way. And I translated this word later. And most of the later, the heading is to the bright, shining, glittering from afar. Superintendent of temple services, the chief musician. So if you think in terms of they're wearing these beautiful Levitical garments, these beautiful priestly garments. And so other translations simply say to the overseer or to the chief musician, and their choices are valid, but in my humble opinion, it doesn't convey as much meaning as what this word deserves. Now, another thing about the Paleo-Hebrew is that you can look at the Paleo and get meaning, even if you can't read it, if you can't understand it, you're going to get some meaning from it. Now, the next word has to do with Nagan, Hebrew 5059, which is the root word for, if I can pronounce it right, because I'm so far away, Hanuga Yanulath, which is Strong's number 5058, and it's the term for a stringed instrument. Nugan means to play or strike the strings. If you look at the word below and compare it to the picture above, I gave you two antique coins, pictures of two antique coins. Both of these are attributed during the period when Israel was trying to rebel against Roman occupation. You can see this is a kinnor harp, and you can also see the paleo around it. So there is the kinnor harp, which is usually considered the Davidic harp. And if you look below the text that I'm reading right now, you'll see the paleo. You have Nun, Gam, Nun. And if you would think of it in terms of a kinnor, if you've ever seen the Davidic harp, you have two columns, And then the gong represents movement. So when you're playing this harp, your hand is moving. You've got this movement. So you've got these two columns. And then, of course, the strings have the upper bar. And then the strings come down like this. And the hand is moving like this. So you can look at Nugon and you can see what's going on. And of course, the noon represents something that's shining, something's beautiful. So it's a beautiful instrument. It's a beautiful instrument. And the harp on these coins, as I said, is a Kenor. It's a lyre type harp. And it had the two columns, and the sound box was always below. Now, all stringed instruments have a sound box. All of them. This is my ukulele, sorry. And so this is the sound box of the ukulele. On the harp, the sound box was usually down here, or it was like this. And you always have to have a sound hole as well, because the sound box, it amplifies the sound. That's how they did it before electronics. That's how they just made a sound box, and then you've got those strings coming down. Now, Nugon combined with the word Shama Yanu, which is the word for 8 or an octave, it tells us that this psalm was to be performed on an 8-stringed lyre harp using a plectrum or a pick. Usually they had the plectrum was a feather, usually. And as I said, this is more, if you'll notice, this is a Kenor harp on a stand. And this is a 10-string one. So it's a little bit bigger than what the one David's indicating. In the final part of the heading, we have the name, Dalt, Uah, Dalt. Dave pronounced it Daweed. Is that how Dave? I think that's how he's pronounced it. That is how it's usually pronounced in the modern Israeli Hebrew. And you could pronounce it David, or even Dude. I always thought that was kind of funny. In the Paleo, it's Da'uad, and this word means beloved, and it's Hebrew, the H1732 in the Strongs. And yes, David was the dude. Other than King David's name, another use can be found in the Song of Solomon, and it's Dodi Li. In the modern Israeli Hebrew, it's Da'uad Ya Laya in Paleo, my beloved to me. It's actually when I was a wedding musician playing on the harp, it's a very famous song, and I've played it at a couple of weddings. Dodi Li, my beloved to me. Now we come to, at last, the body of the psalm. We leave the heading behind, and I enter into probably the most controversial word in all of Scripture. And there probably will be some people who get angry with me. But before I begin, I will state that I have listened to and I have read many, many accounts of Bible researchers and scholars as they explain the position on why they have transliterated the name the way that they do. I'm aware of those.
I need some popcorn for this. This is good.
I need some. I understand these different pronunciations. I understand that, and I will try to explain to you why I've come to the conclusions that I have. I want you to understand that these letters remain constant. However we pronounce them, the letters stay the same. And it's Yah, Ha, Uah, Ha. And they don't change. And of course, we're reading them from the right to the left. Now, these vowels create a Hebrew verb. This is a verb that has become a name. And it is Strong's number 30 68. And I just simply let the letters speak for themselves. I told you that the Paleo has what we call vowels attached to them. So it would be ya, ha, ua, ha. I'm just letting it speak for itself. I'm not trying to do I before E, except after C, none of that. And I place an apostrophe in the middle just to help with translation. It is not in the letters. Do you see? It's not in the letters. I put it there just to help with pronunciation because there is no capitalization. There is no punctuation in the Paleo-Hebrew. None. And the three-letter child root of this is ha-la-ha, which is Strong's 1913, which means to breathe, or to blow, as in the wind blowing. It can also mean desire, because breathing heavily. To long after something or someone. It is synonymous with hayaha. And the above word is Strong's 1961, which carries the definition to be or to exist. These two are synonymous. They mean the same thing. And to the ancient Hebrews, to breathe meant that you were alive. You existed. And I repeat myself for a purpose because, there's a lot of people debating that the true name of Creator is actually found in Exodus 3. And I'm going to read from that, Exodus 3, 14. And Alahayam declared unto Moshe, Ahayaha, Ashar, Ahayaha. And he declared, you shall say unto the children of Yasharel, Ahayaha hath sent me to you. Now, many people claim that this is the only name that Creator gave. And this alone, to their way of thinking, should be how we refer to them. And at one time, I might have fallen into this. But let's just compare, and please excuse my shaky writing. I was trying to use my Apple pen, and I was not too good at it. So my letters are kind of shaky. So here on the right, we have Ya, Ha, Ua, Ha. And after this, Ahayaha. Can you spot the similarities between the two of them? Can you see the symbols that are the same? It's a two-letter word, root. Moshe used it in Exodus 15:2, and also in Exodus 17:6. The word is Yaha. Yaha in the Paleo or Yah in the modern Israeli Hebrew. This name has been preserved in Hallelujah. It's there. And David used it in 68:4. Sing unto Al-Hayam, sing praises unto his name. Lift up to him who rides the arid desert regions. In Yah is his name. And it's those two symbols, the Yah and the Ha. I'm sorry, messed up. And you will exhaust and rejoice before his face. I drew my picture in the wrong spot. Okay, again, breath to them equals life. Just this week, I was alerted to a new to me resource. I can't remember who put me onto it. The Fenton Bible. Farrar Fenton, in his translation, I was going to put that the years, used the term ever living to indicate Creator's name and character. In Psalm 6, I use self-existing one. We find this concept in the beginning of his story in Genesis 1 and 3, when Al-Hayam declares, Yahaya War, which most people translate, let there be light. But it's actually say, he will exist, light. That's what it's saying. I think Dave, just this week, he said something about he will exist, Rakia, which I thought was very interesting. This discussion wasn't as brief as I thought it would be. But I hope that It's brought a little bit of clarity, even if you don't agree with me. Even if you don't agree with me, I hope you understand my position on the name. But more important than how you pronounce the name is to understand that his name equals his character. Do you know his character? Do you try to emulate his character, his way of acting, his will and purpose? If you stir up contention and strife over a pronunciation, then I would question whether you understand his character at all. So, whatever is you feel led to pronounce it, I make no judgment on that. I'm just telling you my position. Now, the next word is like I said, mistakes happen. It says, when the chief shepherd shall appear, you shall receive a crown of glory that fades not away. Now, this is one of my mistakes. As I was saying, when I was doing this, I was very conservative. And I was afraid to go against some of the mistakes I could see. These mistakes that went from person to person to person, to translator to translator to translator. And this is one of them. And it's the Alf Lam, or Lamad. Most lexicons and dictionaries will say that this means is nothing or negation. I have come to realize that this word should be translated exactly as you see it. The Alf carries the meaning of strong, power, first chief. Lamad is the picture of the shepherd's staff, and it has the inherent action meaning of actions a shepherd exhibits: leading, guiding, teaching, protecting. Together they can mean strong leader or chief shepherd. And I really believe that he wants us to think of him as a chief shepherd. Yeshua referred to himself as the good shepherd. He said, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand, who is not the owner of the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees. And the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hired hand and is not concerned about the sheep. I am the good shepherd, and I know my own, and my own know me. Even as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. I made a typo there. So in Psalm 6, those of you who own this book, you can pencil in, be gracious and show mercy, chief shepherd, right before that. So we have chief shepherd, be gracious and show mercy, pity me. And that leads us to the next word, H2603. Now, Kanunu ya, or choneni, is a verb which means be gracious toward, have pity, or make acceptable. The word begins with the hat, which, as I've said before, denotes a wall of protection or a wall of obstruction. The Nun and the Yah show that Yah works both life and protection over those to whom he is gracious toward. Pity me, David asked Yahweh to heal him and make him whole. The word for healing that David uses is Rapha. Now, this is a really interesting word to me. Gesenius defines Rapha as to sew together, as in to mend. Also, to heal should be properly understood as to heal a wounded person by sewing up the wound. Rapha can also mean weak and feeble. I use both of these meanings on page 37 in the Psalms from the Paleo-Hebrew. Pity me, for I am weak and feeble. Rapha, heal me. O Yahweh, make me whole. Now, there are all other uses of the word Rapha in Scripture, and this is when it gets really interesting. The first mention was in Genesis or Bereshith 20:17, where Abraham prayed unto Elohim, and Elohim healed Abimelech and his wife and his maid so that they bore children. The name Raphael has been given to the messenger or angel, Malak. The name means Al, chief shepherd, will heal. In modern Hebrew, they say El. Now, Rapha functions as the root for Raphaim, or Raphaites. This is a race of giants that we found in the Old Testament. King Og of Bashan was descended from the Raphaim. Because of this Rapha root, I suspect that these giants had or have regenerative capabilities. It may even explain one of the ways that the giants came back after the flood, the ones that could heal themselves. So in Exodus 15:26, Elohim tells Moshe and the children of Yasharal, Adanuya, Yahweh, Rapha, or I am Yahweh, your healer. Below is the phrase in the Paleo-Hebrew. Now, our next word in our study, it occurs a lot in Scripture. It is usually translated as soul, and that word is nephash. Now, what is nephash? This is a very deep question. And Josenius, he gives us nephash as its primary definition: breathe, or to take a breath. Again, to the ancients, breathing equated living. And after this, he listed soul as well as life as possibilities. I looked at the online dictionary to define soul, and you can see how they have it. It is the scriptural, or I can't read that too good. Can you read that, Noel? The definition for soul, I can't read it on my.
Yeah, let me, let's see here. So the definition of soul, which is interesting, Pamela, because I was just this week, I was like looking up the definition of soul and looking into this. So this is pretty cool, like spot on timing. All right. The spiritual or immaterial part of a human being or animal regarded as immortal. The example here is they believe death is just one step in a soul's journey through the universe. Number two would be emotional or intellectual energy or intensity, especially as revealed in a work of art or an artistic performance, as in their interpretation lacked soul.
All right. So as you can see, to me, it seems like they're separating the physical and the spiritual, which that would not have been the case to the Hebrew way of thinking. As I said, they linked nephash or nephesh to breathing, which is a physical activity. Now, if we look at that again, we have noon, which is, or nakash. It equals life, something glittering or shining from afar. Phi, or fa, or pei, it's called pei in modern Israeli Hebrew. It means mouth, speech, mouth, speech, while Shan, it looks like a W to us. And it pictures teeth. And it means teeth, eating, consuming, devouring. Nephash is intricately linked to both these things, physical and spiritual. And since we know, of course, that the word breathe or breath is ruah. In scripture, we are told that the nephash can hunger, it can thirst, it can be seen as the center of the emotions, of the faculties of thinking and understanding. In the book of Proverbs, 1 Samuel, and according to Deuteronomy 4 and 9 and Lamentations 3 and 20, without nephesh, with our nephesh, we remember. The nephash can remember. This term was used when, and they also used nephash when they were talking about counting souls. I think Noel talked about this when they were doing census. They used the term souls. Even in the nautical terms, sometimes they said that there were so many souls aboard the ship. So the first mention of nephash, as I said, happens in Genesis or Bereshith 1 and 20. Then Al-Hayam said, let the waters teem with swarms of living creatures, which is nephash, and let birds fly above the earth in the open firmament, which is Rakaya, or Rakia, of Hashemayim. The first mention of nephash in relation to humans occurs in Genesis or Bereshith 2:7. And then Yaha Alahayam formed as Adam of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and Ha-Adam became a living soul, nephash. I will let you draw your own conclusions of what you think nephash is. And I have translated it as the living, vital essence of self, the seat of my emotions, that which breathes. And as I said earlier, breath equals life. I do try to translate that word every time the same way, every time, because one of the problems that we've all discovered is the fact that there's not any, there's inconsistencies in these different English versions. Even within the same translation, they will take one word and translate it multiple ways. So now we encounter a word that we've done in another study, Yasha. Now, if you'll look at this is on page 21 of the PDF. It says, it literally means he will devour, and that in parentheses is my addition. He will devour the eye or experience. Now, Yasha is the root word of Mashiach's name. In the Paleo-Hebrew, we have, again, that phrase, he will devour the eye experience. Yasha, according to Jusinius, should rightly be understood as to be spacious, to be ample, broad, or to set free, to be helped, or to give victory. So, though it's often understood as salvation, that word meaning salvation, it's actually, if you could think in terms of, there's this prisoner inside a small cage, and Yasha, this person is hemmed in, caged in, and suddenly the door's open, and that he or she is drawn out of confinement into open spaces, and that literally is what Yasha means. I was in this narrow space, and suddenly I'm delivered into a broad place. And David desired that Yah would make vast the space, that he would broaden my horizon, free me from narrowness and vexation. And there I tried to use my Apple pen to put that whole phrase in there about David's prayer to Yah. Now, next we have on page 23, top of 23, I will say of Yahweh, my refuge and my fortress, my Alahayah, in him I will trust. And this is Psalm 91, verse 2. That word, the word refuge, is hat samak, which means refuge. This is a 2-letter parent root. We have hat, that wall of protection. Samak, which is support or guard. It's a picture of a thorn. When we add the dalt, door, the word becomes hasad, which in the Paleo-Hebrew translates as door to refuge. So hasad, door of refuge. The website Do It in Hebrew. It defines hasad as to pity, to have mercy, to save, to spare, to go easy on. Justinia states that the meaning of hasad is desire, ardor, zeal, and kindness. So David prays for Yah to deliver his nefesh. And he doesn't say it, deliver my nefesh because I'm king, or deliver my nefesh because of something I've done. He says, deliver me on account of your zeal and ardor, your grace and favor, your mercy, for there is no remembrance of you in the realm of death, in Sheol, the hollow subterranean place. Who will cast for your praise? So now we have a few not so pleasant words to look at. The first is Sheol, which is Sheol in the modern Israeli Hebrew, and it means hollow subterranean place. And also Ma'at, which means is death, or the abode of the dead. Death. Now, this first unpleasant word, at least for me, it is Sheol or Sheol. The child root for Sheol or Sheol is Sheol, which means to beg or to pray to let me out. It literally means let me out. And the first two symbols in both words show us that this is a devouring power. So, I feel like, Sheol is an entity, as is the next unpleasant word, Ma'at, which can be interpreted as death, the place or abode of the dead. It can mean fatal disease or pestilence, as well as destruction. Now, David contrasts this negative energy. Now, Hebrews, they love to do that. You have the negative and the positive side by side, sort of, take the right choice. So he contrasts this negative image with, there is no remembrance of you in the abode of death. And in Sheol, who will cast forth your praise? Now, the word for praise, Yadaha, the first two symbols of this word are the Yod or Yod and the Dalet or Dalt. And it literally means, which are the kasub for hand. And so to recap everything that we've come through so far, the first section of Psalm 6, David asks for help, for healing. The second part, he chronicles what's happening in his life, with this portion ending on why he thinks Yahweh should assist him. He says, my eyes are moth-eaten, and this comes from ashash, as in your clothes falling to pieces because of age, overuse, or moth. If you'll notice, I forgot to put this in there, but the symbol institutes, it starts with the ion, and this looks like the eye. I noticed some people have been posting the eye of Sauron. So this eye is an imperative. When you saw this, the symbol of the eye, that is an imperative to look. Look at this. And what are you supposed to notice? The shan or shin occurs twice. Now, as I said before, in the Paleo-Hebrew, they didn't have punctuation or capitalization. So how they would emphasize something would be to repeat it. If you remember in the New Testament, Yeshua would say, "Truly, truly, I say unto you." Well, he's emphasizing. He's actually saying, "Amanah, amanah." He's saying, "Truly, truly, I say unto you." So to repeat something is to emphasize it. So the shan is the picture of a teeth. It looks like a W. It looks like a W, and it represents teeth to eat or consume or devour. So this is a double, a shash. It's a double mark of teeth. So it's really destructive. Next, he states that my eyes are stricken with age. Because the Paleo-Hebrew language is pictographic in nature, you might say that Yah built in an autocorrect of his own. If you look, for instance, on it's page, I think 25, a TUC. We have a TUC. And I kind of drew this to give you an understanding of what's happening here. You have a TUC, which is ion, thu. In the modern, it's called tav or tau, and the kuf. And the ion means to eye, see, observe. The thu means sign, mark, or covenant. And kuf means sun on the horizon, path, or time. And if you'll notice the kuf, it actually looks like you can actually see that it looks like a pathway, and the sun on the horizon would have been the sun going down in the ocean or the sea. So in the Paleo, it literally means, you can look at it, eye marks the path of time. And so that's what he's saying when he says, my eyes are stricken with age, eye marks the passage of time. So that just shows you that the accessibility of the Paleo-Hebrew, Kethub, even if you don't read it, if you don't understand it, you can get a good bit of meaning just from looking at the pictures of the letters. Now we're on page 26, and I sort of highlighted the next word and put, if you're wondering, we are here, so that you can see that yes, this is the word we're working on now. And that word is zarar, which most lexicons define as adversary or rival. The two-letter parent word is zar, which I find interesting. H6862, which means adversary, enemy, distress, affliction, stone, or rock, which is seen as being something being compact and hard. And by doubling if you'll notice on that highlighted word, by doubling the Rosh, he is actually saying that this is his chief rival, not just any adversary, his chief rival. Put these meaning together, you have the sense of this person is being pressed, their path of their life, Zod, becoming narrow through distress, where he doesn't have a lot of options. And in the last section, in Psalms from the Paleo-Hebrew, David he exhibits his trust in Elohim. He says, turn away from me, depart. And that word, turn away, depart, comes from H5493, Sar, which is Samakresh, which is not Zar, it's Sar. And Hebrews love to do that. Play on words. You put two words that are very similar together, close together. And please forgive my shaky drawing at the bottom of 26. The Psalmic pictures support, guard, thorn, or turning. When the letters are combined, these literally mean turn the head. Turn the head. A beautiful scene where someone turned aside in a good sense, not the bad sense as in turning away from Yah, but in a good sense. We see that in Exodus 3, 1-6. And I'm using Farrar Fenton's Bible. I put that at the top of 27. And this is God's revelation in the burning bush. Would you like to read that, Noel?
Yes, I would. All right, trying not to get an echo here. All right, here we go. God's revelation in the burning bush. And of course, I guess I assume you want me to read this as the names were given here. So Moses, however,
you could do either one. If you want to put instead of God, Lord, you could put whatever you want to do. Just read it as you will.
I gotcha. I'm on it. Moshe, however, was shepherding the sheep of Jethro. I guess that would be like Jethro with a Y there. His father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he had led the sheep to the far side of the desert and came to the mountain of Elohim in Horeb, where a messenger of the ever-living appeared to him in a flame of fire in a bush. When he looked, he saw that the bush burnt with fire, yet the bush was not consumed. Then Moshe said, I will draw near and examine this great wonder, why the bush is not burnt up. But Yahuwah saw that he approached to examine it. So Elohim called to him from the midst of Sinai and said, Moshe, Moshe, and he answered, I am here.
Very good. Now, you might be wondering, why am I using Farrar Fenton? Fenton's translation, like I said, it's a new to me, even though I think he worked like from the late 1800s. I admit, I just couldn't help myself. Fenton was accused of being erroneous and amateurish in his translations. And why? It's because he went against the accepted version of the Hebrew translations. He argued that these translators made a mistake, and instead of successive generations of translators fixing the problem, they just kept repeating the errors. And I empathize with him. I greatly admire his use of ever living instead of the traditional, LORD. I applaud his translating Malak as messenger. No translation, as I said, is 100% accurate, but I've enjoyed his translation, what I've read so far. Now, once again, we are in the middle of a bit of controversy. There may be some people who react negatively. First, let me address this first. Malak, as I said, means one who walks for another. It is usually translated angel or king. This one is a bit different. In this particular section, it's a little bit different. We have, instead of Mam Lamad Kaf, we have Mam Lamed Aleph Kaf. You see the difference? An Aleph has been dropped in it. Now, the Aleph, the addition of the Aleph it changes the meaning. It's not just any message. This is the first chief primary messenger. We also need to, I'm going to, with all due respect to Mr. Fenton, I do like what I've seen. We need to erase some of those articles that don't happen in Hebrew. We love our we add so many of them, so many articles and prepositions in English, but in reality, it's not there. So if we erase those superfluous words, this should actually read this section, Chief Messenger Yahweh, our first messenger ever living. Now, that's a little bit, that's a little bit controversy that Yahweh is a messenger, and more to come, as I say. Next, we see the word Paul. Paul. It means to make or fabricate. Some people define this word as work or workers. This word can be a person who attempts to create, to devise. The word Paul does not carry a negative or positive connotation unless we add it. And I noticed that Michael, he dropped Paul. That's what Stephen Pidgeon and the Sefer, instead of using the name Paul, they say Paul, worker. So that is what that word means, worker, fabricator, designer, deviser, any one of those would work. And it's coupled with Alan. Now, Alan, it states that Jusinius states that word means nothing, as in vanity or falsehood, fraud, misfortune, adverse circumstances. It can also, if you take away the Nakud, which, as I've said before, the Nakud are an interpolation. That means it was added later. Many Bible scholars of the 19th century, 1800s, there was one particular, he said, all those Nakuds need to be erased. We need a clean copy. We need to erase all that. So this can also mean vigor, strength, and power. And that meaning actually, it lines up a little bit better with the Paleo. So this would be a strong, powerful falsehood, a fraud, or a misfortune on a grand scale. David tells us that this fabricator of falsehood, he tells him to depart. For Yahweh has heard and answered Shema, his voice of weeping. Now, David makes a note of these positive outcomes of his supplication. First, Yahweh heard and answered. Secondly, Yahweh, ever living, accepted his prayer. He has taken or received David's hymn of supplication. Heard and answered is derived from a well-known term, Shema, in the modern Israeli Hebrew, or Shema in the Paleo. And I wrote it again with my shaky Apple pen at the bottom of 28. And David ends this psalm with a note of expectation. Now, let's look at that again. I'm going to read it because I think I forgot to put that in. If you have your Psalms in the Paleo, you can follow along on page, I can find myself, on page 39. He says, let the hope and expectation of my adversaries fail, and let my haters be exceedingly vexed. Let their mind be troubled and confused. Let them tremble in trepidation. Turn them back and put them to silence in a wink. So we have a different term for adversary. If you'll notice at the top of 29 in the PDF, Aleph Yah Bat. It means a powerful work inside. With the Yah suffix, it becomes my hater, my adversary. He will turn them back. The understanding here is that the adversary will be converted, or that he will return to Al-Hayyan and his way. The psalm ends with Rana, in a wink, in a moment, suddenly, instantly, the hater will be turned back, converted to the way of Al-Hayyan in a very quick, very sudden moment of time. So, thus ends our study of Psalm 6. And at this point, I'm going to, I guess, stop with our study and open it up for anyone who has questions.
Pamela, that was way more than I think anybody here expected. That was amazing. I know everybody sitting through this really enjoyed that. I'm putting you on the spot here. I should have brought this up earlier. Is it safe to say that you are done with your job in Florida this week?
Yes,
finished that?
I say goodbye in a friendly kind of way. And I'm currently, if you hear it echoey here in my apartment, it's because I'm packing up my things, and I'm starting a new journey in my life. So
I was half expecting you would pull a Thelma and Louise and like just drive up here to the Outer Banks, and yeah, that's exciting. So this week, Pamela came to my house for Passover, and so we had a few days that just she and I just sit down and talk, and she's excited that this day. I think she's been pushed to her limits in the school system, and she's ready to move on to the next part of her life. Now, there's going to be people here with questions, and I have just a couple here. I took a couple notes. But one thing I really liked, Pamela, that you talked about, and you say this a lot, is because you get into the being that you get into the paleo and you get into the pronunciations, and everybody here knows that I could not pronounce many things correctly to save my life. It's actually pretty embarrassing. But you were saying that it's not about pronunciation, but about knowing the character of the Father. And it's interesting because just today, I was reading some Plato again. I'm kind of brushing up on my philosophy 101, and the big thing with Platonism. All right, for everyone out there in Bible land that gets, you get in these arguments about the pronunciation of names. The thing is with Plato is that when you would talk about like the world of forms that we live in, we would call this the matrix, how our knowledge of Elohim, or you could say of God, or however he would say it in Greek, that it comes from, according to Plato, through our intellect, which comes from a pre-existence in heaven. In other words, he says the only reason we could know about a creator is because we are in the world of forms, and it comes from a prior existence. There's a point to this, so just follow through with me on this. Where I highly disagree with Plato is he puts everything on the intellect, whereas I would say Yahushua HaMashiach, and even a proper reading of the transformative document that is the Torah, is about the heart. Right, so it is. This is the difference between a Platonist and a Yahushaist, or Yahushua ist. And like, if for those of you out there that you get so hung up on the intellect, that is a Platonic attitude versus a heart attitude, right? So I just really like that point. And now there's a couple questions I do have here for you, Pamela, before. Now, if anybody here does have a question, be sure to raise your hand. I can bring you up on stage. You can ask a question or make a comment before we close shop for the night. Number one, you had talked about the Rephaim, or you said Raphael, which means you said al, or how do you pronounce that? Will he?
Yeah, in the Paleo, you pronounce it all, not al. In the modern Israeli Hebrew, they pronounce it el, so it's Raphael, and in the Paleo, it'll be Raphael.
Well, the reason I bring this up, because this is the first I've heard this, and it was fascinating. There were people listening in going, "This is really fascinating," because the standard idea, which I think Michael Heiser really popularized recently. He just died a couple weeks ago, but he said that that Raphaim meant dead one, and so I'm curious your thoughts on that. Is there any connection? Do you see in the maybe the Paleo to dead one, or because you had talked about it, and maybe you could even elaborate on what it is to regenerate. I think maybe you were hinting at coming back. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, in the Paleo, it's Rosh, which is head, chief, or first. Fa or pay, and then I think Aleph. So you've got chief first, and then you've got speech or mouth, and then you've got a power again. So I'm not seeing in the Paleo anything about dead ones. The word for dead, as we went over, was ma'uath. So there are some who said dead ones. It could be that they're going by the word weak or feeble. If you think in spiritual terms, to Allah Hayam, yes, they might be a giant, but they are weak. They are weak. They are ruled by their passions, their desire, their vengeance, their anger, whatever. They're ruled by it. And I have found that the more people get away from Al Hayam, the more they lose that creativity, their really life, and I'm not talking about the physical. I'm talking about, your ruach. So
well, yeah. So that was really fascinating because I was thinking about doing something on Og, and everybody here knows Og was a Rephaim, and one of the ideas is that he came from the realm of the dead. In fact, I think there was like charms that have been found in that region. The idea is that people would call upon Og to defend them. And one of the things I think he was probably doing when he went after Israel, because he was protecting Canaan, the locals there probably called upon him. So just the idea of this regeneration and so on and so forth, that I find that really fascinating. Okay, now the one other thing I wanted to ask you, because if you did explain this, forgive me, but the difference, but you had talked about the nephash, or the soul. What are your thoughts on the difference between the nephash and the ruach? Because it seems to me that they're used interchangeably in Scripture. Like you'll see it for a little bit of both. I think in the book of Enoch it says that the ruachs of the dead nephash, the dead soul. So I'm like, well, that's kind of interesting. So do you have any thoughts on the difference between the nephash and the ruach?
Well, ruach means breath. And humans, that is Adam, was created with breath. He was the breath of Yah, and he became a Nephash. So if you can think in terms of breath of Yah, and then Nephash. And Nephash, you were seen as Nephash if you breathed, as I said. You were living if you could breathe. Ruach is, instead of the ha at the end, you have the wall of protection. And I think in terms of the Ruach, she is both a wall of protection and a wall of obstruction. You see this action in Genesis 1, verse 2, where darkness rises up from the abyss and the Ruach al-Hayam reacts violently as a wall of protection, sort of saying, you're not coming here. I've just cleaned the house. You're not coming in my house and making a mess. So she was a wall of protection. The earth had been swept clean, laid bare, and stop. She says, stop. Lisa said something about Goliath. Yes, that is why he cut his head off. Goliath was Raphaim. And the only way you could kill them was to cut the head off. Really. Because he might have regenerated.
So this is kind of like a Highlander thing here.
You had to. And if you notice, David went after the brothers too, because there was 5 of them. And he and his men went after the other 4, because there was 5 brothers there, and Goliath, I suppose, was the biggest or meanest. And,
Pamela, I'm sorry to interrupt. Pamela, why do you suspect that you had to cut their head off? What was the importance of that?
I'm not sure, but I think it has to do with, your the spinal cord. I'm not sure. I just know that was the thing. If you notice, a lot of times in mythology, that's what you had to do. It was the practice to cut off the head of some of these monsters, some of these witches. They would bury the witches face down so that if they did come back, they would dig them, instead of digging their way out of the dirt, they were digging themselves deeper. So it was.
Well, I'll never think of Highlander the same way again. One more thing here, and we could always, if nobody is raising their hands to speak in here, I know everyone is intently listening right now, and some people are commenting. We could always move over to the regular voice chat room. My last thing was on the Shema. Could you maybe explain the meaning of that one more time?
Shema?
Yes.
Well, if you look in the Paleo, you've got Shem or Sean, Mom, and Ayan. And the first 2 letters spell the word name. And so it's Ayan, see, observe the name. And so they call, a lot of people, they're afraid to say the sacred name, so they say Hashem. And so it means observe the eye. Shema, observe the eye. Observe the name. If that makes sense.
Thank you. I don't have anything more to add. Pamela, is there anything you wanted to say before unless if somebody wants to raise their hand, come up here and ask a question, or you could always write one in. Did you have anything that you wanted?
Before we go over to the regular voice chat, I do want to say one thing. I've had some people who've asked me some questions about some of the names in the book, the Paleo-Hebrew. If you'll notice, if you've got it, if you look through it, remember that in the Paleo there is no capitalization, there is no punctuation. However, to help people understand that I'm talking about the Most High, that I am talking about the name or a name, of the Most High, I put it in all caps. Yaha, Waha, Al Hayyan, Adanuya, all these names, I put them in all caps. Just like Mr. Fenton, Farrar Fenton, he put ever living in all caps. It's a good practice, although in the Hebrew it would not. There is no capitalization. As I said, for emphasis, they would repeat something. So if you see in your book, if you look, everywhere you see all caps, I'm talking about the Most High or Yeshua, one or the other.
All right. Well, thank you, Pamela. That was incredible. And I think we're going to cut this portion off right here, and then we can all go over to the general voice chat. We can just continue the conversation over there. So once again, thank you, Pamela. And you guys can ask her questions as we go over there. So if in the instance that I cut the recording here, Shabbat Shalom one last time, everybody. And we'll do this again next week. I'll meet you guys over there. Yeah, sorry if I rudely just gave you guys the boot in the last room, but let the after party begin, and you guys can ask Pamela questions as long as she wants to stick around tonight, or just bring up anything, talk about anything. Handing over to you guys.
Yeah, Pam, I got a question about the word for kindle of fire. That word kindle. Do you have a breakdown on that?
Now, say that again. I'm having difficulty hearing you.
Yeah, when the whoops. One second. Okay, sorry about that. I accidentally logged out of my computer, but I can still hear. In the Torah, when it talks about don't kindle a fire on the Sabbath day, do you have a breakdown on the word kindle?
Well, when I looked into it, it has to do with like business. Like if you're kindling a fire to create something, like in terms of a baker kindling a fire in his oven to bake bread, or kindling a fire, even if you're kindling a fire, like say to create vessels for the temple, or at that time it would have been tabernacle. If you're conducting any sort of business, you're building a fire to do something in terms of making money. That is, in my opinion, what he's meaning by kindling a fire. When I first came to Torah, I did ridiculous things, because I was wanting to keep it perfectly, which I don't know that I can. I'm human. But I did ridiculous things, like I to keep from kindling a fire, as in, because this one Jewish site said, don't turn on your lights in your house the night before the sun goes down. Turn all the lights you're going to be needing the next day on, so that you won't kindle a fire. Don't use your oven. Don't crank your car. Don't turn on your washing machine. And so I did ridiculous things, like I taped my refrigerator light so that it would not come on. That is how ridiculous I was when I first came to Torah, because I was so overzealous. I do not think that, although I think it would be good practice, like say for instance you have wood heat in your house, it would be good practice if you, say for instance, kept your fire banked during the night, so you didn't have to rebuild your fire. But if your fire goes out, I don't see that the Most High would expect you to stay in freezing cold and endanger yourself or your family, especially if you're in a very frigid place. I don't think that's what it means at all. I hope that helped you.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's kind of more talking about. I totally agree on everything you just said right there. But when I say or what I mean when I ask that question about kindle, is I've heard some people say it's the act of like creating the spark or actually lighting the fire. And others say, no, it's just adding wood. Adding wood itself is kindling, even if the fire is already going. I was wondering if the breakdown of the word in the paleo or something like that gave
Well,
any
if you
insight.
had the verse, I would have to look it up because I don't know. I don't have it memorized offhand. If I had the verse, so if you could look that up and you know, I could look at it then in the paleo and see what I say.
In Deuteronomy, there was a man that was caught gathering kindling, and he was brought before, or it was brought to Moses' attention, and Moses came to Yah and asked him what to do, and it was Yah that pronounced judgment that he was to be taken outside of the gates and stoned. So I think the term kindling can also mean a few different things, not just kindling a fire, but kindling is also a type of wood. So I think, the drawing a kindling, gathering kindling, and making a kindling fire could all be part of the same, how would you say, reference when it comes to the Sabbath, what to do with it or what to not to do with it. I've also heard that a lot of people, like Pamela was saying, they don't even snap a light switch on because it actually sparks an arc inside the light switch, which is kindling a fire. And I think that's kind of taking it to the extreme, but that's part of that kindling too, is that arc and the spark and electrical shock to initiate a light switch.
Well, I think in that particular situation, the guy was literally working. I mean, if you go out and you're foraging around trying to pick up and find wood for a fire, you're working. And he should have done that the day before. He should have gathered the wood that he needed for that day. Because, just to pick it up and throw it on a fire, I wouldn't consider that work. You're just keeping the fire going that you already have. But to go out and be gathering wood on the Sabbath, that was literally work, and that's why he was condemned.
Yes, I concur. I'm not arguing with you on that. I was referring to the sticks as being kindling.
Josh made a good point. He said that the man who was put to death, he was gathering the wood for a purpose, and that he had already broken Sabbath, in his heart, Leb, which is the leader inside. He had already broken Sabbath in his heart. He had already profaned Sabbath, and it's right here. It says interesting. That's it says through ba'ar, which is very interesting. In your house, it's saying here not to consume it. Maybe it says don't let your fire go out. I think that's what it's meaning. You better not let your fire go out so that you have to build it up again.
Well, right there in 35:3, you shall not burn a fire in any of your dwellings on the Sabbath. So, I mean, that seems pretty clear there. You're not even supposed to have a fire, period.
Well, maybe in desert regions, but really, really, let's think in terms of he doesn't. There are some people in this world who would have you, laying comatose on your bed on Sabbath, not moving, barely breathing, and in the cold, in the dark, and the word in Jusinius, he's saying that you shall not kindle, as in for the kindle, he's saying that you will not feed it. to feed upon, to eat, or eat it up, to consume. As in, to gather a bundle. That's what he's saying. Don't gather a bundle of firewood, specifically so that you can consume it with fire. That's what it's saying here. Become brutish, to depasture a field. These are different meanings of that one word that is considered kindle.